Today I'm taking on a tough challenge, turning raw clay into a fully fired pottery piece in just 24 hours. That's right, processing the clay, forming the clay, and firing it all in one day. Will I succeed, or will it turn into a muddy disaster? Stick around to find out. Let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is pass that clay through my old Mexican corn grinder, which will make short work of turning that into a powder. Next, I need to add temper or non-plastic material to the clay at about a 20% ratio. In this case, sand. Today I'm going to put in a little extra temper just because I'm doing this in one day. I want it to dry as fast as possible. More temper is going to open up that clay body more and allow it to dry faster. Sometimes when clay is first mixed, it will dry out a little bit, even when it's wrapped up in plastic, just as that water kind of seeps down into the clay. So a trick to avoid that is to poke holes in the clay and pour water in them. And then the excess water will get absorbed by the clay as it kind of percolates down through all those clay particles. Now I could use that right away, but it's going to do a lot better for me if I let it rest a little bit before I use it. So obviously I don't have a lot of time to burn, but I'm going to let that sit for about an hour, and then I'm going to come out and make that pot. Okay, while that clay is resting, let's talk a little bit about the time required in making a pot. Now, I can form a pot in much less than 24 hours. Most of the pots I make, of course it depends on the size and the shape of the pot. Most pots I can form in like 2 or 3 hours tops. And so where does the time go in a 24-hour period that I need that to make a pot? Well, when you think about those videos I make where I make a pot from beginning to end, all the way from clay through firing, those usually take me about 3 to 4 weeks to make that pot all the way through the process. So that 3 or 4 weeks is taken up mostly with different stages of drying. First of all, the pot needs to dry really slow. If it dries too quickly, it can crack the clay. But secondly, there's different steps that go on at different stages of drying. And so I'll form the pot, I'll let it dry a little bit, then I'll scrape and smooth the outside, then I'll let it dry some more. Then I'll slip it, then I'll let it dry some more. Then I'll burnish it, then I'll let it dry some more. Finally, I'll paint it, and then I let it dry some more before firing. And so there's all these different processes that go on at different stages of drying. And in between, we're trying to let it dry real slow so we don't crack the pot. Now, with this process today, I'm going to make it a little easy on myself. I'm not going to go through all those steps, but still, to get it fully dry and able to fire tomorrow is going to be a challenge. So I started grinding that clay around 12:30 today. So I figure I have until about noon tomorrow to get this done. I'm hoping to get the pot in the fire around 8 o'clock in the morning. That way I can take it out and show you at noon and still be within that 24-hour period. Now, if the pot isn't fully dry in the morning, hopefully it'll be close, I can always stick it in my oven, heat it up a little bit, and get rid of the rest of the moisture before I fire it. But drying it out slowly enough that it doesn't crack is the real key of this challenge. The pot I've decided to recreate is this little Dragoon red on brown pot. First of all, it's rather simple, should be easy to paint. It's rather open-mouthed, so it will dry quickly. It'll get lots of air inside the pot. Also, it's a brown body clay, so there's no slipping or polishing required. It's just brown with some red thrown on top of it. Very simple, very easy, but I think it'll look nice. It hasn't fully soaked up that water that I put in it, but we're out of time, so it's gonna have to be good enough. Keep in mind that the thinner you make the walls of your pot, the faster they're gonna dry. Once I get the base of this pot kind of sorted out, all leveled off and ready to go, then I'm going to flip it over and take it out of the pookie, just temporarily, to clean up the bottom. This will make it faster when I get to that point. There'll be less work to do on the bottom when I'm done with the pot. Having had that cleaned up, I'm ready to put the pookie back on, flip it over, and then start coiling those walls up. If you watched a few of my videos, you probably know. Some of you haven't. The process here is called the coil and scrape method. And the steps are coil, bond, that is attach that coil to the body of the pot, bond it. Pinch it thinner. Scrape it smooth, both inside and outside, and then repeat as necessary. Once I get the body of the pot all formed, I need to put the neck on. And I've kind of, at that point, pinched it in too much. Because remember, this pot is supposed to have a fairly open mouth, fairly broad opening there. So I'm actually going to trim some of that back before I add the last coil, which will form the neck. And then go through the same process again with that last coil. And then because now the top of that coil where I pinched it up is kind of uneven, I need to trim that down even for a nice smooth rim. All right, so it's 3 o'clock. It's the middle of the afternoon. This is the hottest and driest time of the day. Let's see what we're at. Temperature-wise, it is 94 degrees here in Tucson, and the relative humidity is 6%. So it should dry pretty fast. I'm going to leave it uncovered here to encourage it to dry quickly. I'm going to come out here as soon as it's firm enough. I'm going to flip it upside down, clean up any cleaning I need to do, you know, blemishes and such that are on the bottom, and then continue to let it dry as quickly as possible. Okay, this has been setting and drying for several hours outside, and it's making really good progress towards being dry. It's not there yet, but it is doing pretty good, and it's relatively evenly dry. At this point, I'm going to move it not inside, but onto the porch where it's a little more protected from the breeze. The weather is currently 74 degrees and 16% relative humidity, so quite a bit cooler and damper than it was earlier. Still relatively warm and dry, so it will continue to dry. I just want to protect it a little bit since I'm not going to be around to check on it as I go to bed. I'm moving it here onto the porch, and I'm going to cover it with a piece of cloth just to make sure it dries a little more slowly or a little more evenly. That's the main thing. And then I will set my alarm for like 5 o'clock, and I will get out here and check on it and try to get some painting done. The other thing I'm going to do is get my paint ready. So I've already got it mixed up, but it's dry, so I'm going to add some water to it so that when I get up in the morning, hopefully it's ready to use. All right, so it is 5:55 in the morning. Show you the weather just so we can talk about how fast it's drying. It is currently 64 degrees and the relative humidity is 22%, so quite a bit cooler and damper than it was when we started. And this is dry. It's dried a lot, but it's still also got quite a bit of moisture in it. You can see by the color differentiation, the bottom is quite damp still, and also along the neck here. I am going to go ahead and get started painting. I would rather do this if it was bone dry, but I'm going to go ahead and paint it now quickly because I'm going to have to cook this in my oven for a while before it's dry enough to fire. So I want to get this in my oven by 7:30. That only gives me an hour and a half to get the painting done. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time worrying about camera angles and getting a good shot while I'm painting it. More of my emphasis is going to be getting this finished painted in time to put it in my oven, in time to get it fired. The red paint I'm using here today is just made from mixing about 50-50 red clay and red iron oxide. Red iron oxide is something you can buy at like a ceramic store, or if you want to go out in nature and collect it like I did, it's just hematite. That's the type of stone it is, ground up and processed. There's a lot to learn about natural pigments and paints. And if you'd like to learn more about that, I have a whole online masterclass on my website. That's ancientpottery.how, and that's a great way to learn more about those natural pigments, which is a pretty deep subject. Okay, it's about 10 after 8, and so I'm pushing it really tight. I left this in the oven a little longer than I planned because when I first pulled it out, you could see the color on the inside at the bottom was still a little dark. And so color is a great way to tell if there's moisture still in the clay. And it just looked a little dark, and I heated it for another maybe 10 minutes, and it's definitely lightened up, and it's hotter. It's hotter to the touch, you know, because that moisture leaving is actually keeping it a little cooler. So now I've already got my charcoal started here, so I just got to load the pot up, put the charcoal in, and let it burn. And we're still pushing it pretty close, so I'm going to be out here checking on it and kind of trying to get it cooled off maybe around 11:30, 11:45, so I can have it done at least by 12. This is a Tony Soares style charcoal kiln. This is a great way to fire pottery, especially if you live in a city, so you're not making a lot of smoke and flames that scare people, make them call the fire department. I'll put a link down in the doobly-doo to where you can learn more about firing this way in case you're interested. Still very, very hot. Just after 11, so we've got about an hour left for it to cool. Whew, very hot. Well, there you have it, my 24-hour pot. What do you think? I like it. You know, it's not the smoothest pot I ever made. It's not the best paint job, but it's got kind of a rustic, primitive charm to it that I really like. And it matches what I was trying to recreate in that Dragoon red on brown type. Now, was it fired hot enough? It rings like a bell, so we know it fired plenty hard. If you'd like to learn more about the historical background of Mogollon red on brown pottery, I made a video a couple years ago talking about kind of how Mogollon pottery evolved throughout maybe 500 or 600 years from this simple red on brown into very elaborate polychrome pottery. And I'll link that video up right over here, so go watch that. Thanks for watching today. I'll catch you next time.